Welcome to Crash Course U.S. History, A.O. Brown version. I'm Dillon Shepard. This is episode 1 of 1, and today we're going to be talking about how the U.S. kicked butt in World War II. So before we get into America taking butt and kicking names during World War II, we need to talk about how the war started. Way back in 1933, this guy named Adolf Hitler became the Reich Chancellor of Germany. After this, he quickly consolidated power and appointed himself the supreme leader in 1934. Hitler was obsessed with this perfect race, which was known as the Aryan race, and it consisted of people with blonde hair and blue eyes of German backgrounds. During the 1930s, Hitler just ignored the Treaty of Versailles that was put on Germany during World War I and began rearming Germany secretly. Hitler then signed treaties with Italy and Japan against the Soviet Union and sent troops to occupy Austria in 1938. Then 1 year later, Hitler annexed Czechoslovakia with nobody standing up to him. America and the Soviet Union were too busy focusing on internal politics, and France and Britain were still recovering from the hard impacts of World War I. During the August of 1939, Hitler and the Soviet leader Joseph Stalin signed the German-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact, which made Great Britain and France start freaking out. Hitler had been planning his invasion of Poland for a long time, and Poland had been guaranteed military support from Great Britain if Poland was attacked by Germany. On September 1st, 1939, Hitler marched into Poland from the west, which resulted in Great Britain and London declaring war on Germany 2 days later, which officially began World War II. During the summer of 1940, German planes bombed Britain continuously, with night raids on London and other industrial centers, killing many innocent civilians and doing a lot of damage. In the Battle of Britain, the Royal Air Force defeated the Luftwaffe, and this made Hitler postpone his plans to invade. America provided crucial aid to Great Britain because they were drained of defensive resources, and this was all possible under the Lend-Lease Act, passed by the U.S. Congress in early 1941. On June 22, 1941, Hitler ordered the invasion of the Soviet Union, codenamed Operation Barbarossa.
No, Barbarossa.
Barbarossa.
No, Barbarossa.
Say it again.
Barbarossa.
Barbarossa.
Close enough.
The Soviet tanks and aircraft greatly outnumbered the Germans. Their air technology was largely obsolete, and the impact of the surprise invasion helped Germans get within 200 miles of Moscow by mid-July. With Britain facing Germany and Europe, the United States was the only nation capable of combating Japanese aggression, which by late 1941 included an expansion of its ongoing war with China and the seizure of European colonial holdings in the Far East. Pearl Harbor is a U.S. naval base near Honolulu, Hawaii, that was the scene of a devastating surprise attack by Japanese forces on December 7, 1941. Just before 8 a.m. on that Sunday morning, hundreds of Japanese fighter planes descended on the base, where they managed to destroy or damage nearly 20 American naval vessels, including 8 battleships and over 300 airplanes. More than 2,400 Americans died in the attack, including civilians, and another 1,000 people were wounded. The day after the assault, President Franklin D. Roosevelt asked Congress to declare war on Japan. The attack on Pearl Harbor served to unify the American public opinion in favor of entering World War II, and on December 8th, Congress declared war on Japan with only one dissenting vote. Jeannette Rankin was the first woman to ever hold office in the U.S. federal government and was the one person who voted against entering World War II. Germany and the other Axis powers promptly declared war on the United States. 6 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the U.S. defeated Japan in one of the most decisive naval battles of World War II. Thanks in part to major advances in code breaking, the United States was able to preempt and counter Japan's planned ambush of its few remaining aircraft carriers, inflicting permanent damage on the Japanese Navy by taking out 4 aircraft carriers in the Battle of Midway. Up next, the most decisive victory for the Allies in the Pacific theater came in the Battle of Guadalcanal. With Japanese troops stationed in this section of the Solomon Islands, U.S. Marines launched a surprise attack in August of 1942 and took control of an air base that was under construction. Reinforcements were funneled to the island as a series of land and sea clashes unfolded, and both sides endured heavy losses to their warship contingents. However, the Japanese suffered a far greater toll of casualties, forcing their withdrawal from the Guadalcanal by February of 1943. This allowed the U.S. to begin the strategy of island hopping. D-Day in the Battle of Normandy was the next major battle for America, which lasted from June 1944 to August of 1944. This battle resulted in the Allied liberation of Western Europe from Nazi Germany's control. Codenamed Operation Overlord, the battle began on June 6, 1944, which is known as D-Day, when some 156,000 American, British, and Canadian forces landed on 5 beaches along a 50-mile stretch of the heavily fortified coast of France's Normandy region. The invasion was one of the largest amphibious military assaults in history and required extensive planning. Prior to D-Day, the Allies conducted a large-scale deception campaign designed to mislead the Germans about the intended invasion target. By late August 1944, all of northern France had been liberated, and by the following spring, the Allies had defeated the Germans. The Normandy landings have been called the beginning of the ending of the war in Europe. Later on in December, the Battle of the Bulge took place, and Adolf Hitler attempted to split the armies in northwest Europe by means of a surprise blitzkrieg thrust through the Ardennes to Antwerp. And caught off guard, American units fought desperate battles to stem the German advance at St. Vith, Elsenborn Ridge, Houffalize, and Bastogne. As the Germans drove deeper into the Ardennes in an attempt to secure vital bridgeheads, the Allied line took on this appearance of a large bulge, giving rise to the battle's name. Lieutenant General George S. Patton's successful maneuvering of the Third Army to Bastogne proved vital to the Allied defense, leading to the neutralization of the German counteroffensive despite heavy casualties. Victory in Europe Day, generally known as VE Day, or simply V-Day, celebrated on May 8, 1945 to mark the formal acceptance by the Allies of World War II of Nazi Germany's unconditional surrender of its armed forces. Just 3 months later, though, an American B-29 bomber dropped the world's first deployed atomic bomb over the Japanese city of Hiroshima. The explosion wiped out 90% of the city and immediately killed 80,000 people, with tens of thousands more dying later of radiation exposure. 3 days later, a second B-29 dropped another atomic bomb on Nagasaki, killing an estimated 40,000 people. Japan's Emperor Hirohito announced his country's unconditional surrender in World War II in a radio address on August 15th, citing the devastating power of a new and most cruel bomb. On August 15, 1945, it was announced that Japan had surrendered unconditionally to the Allies, effectively ending World War II. Since then, both August 14th and August 15th has been known as Victory over Japan Day, or simply VJ Day. The term has also been used for September 2nd, 1945, when Japan's formal surrender took place aboard the USS Missouri, anchored in Tokyo Bay. Coming several months after the surrender of Nazi Germany, Japan's capitulation in the Pacific brought 6 years of hostilities to a final and highly anticipated close.